been scarred and I've been bruised. I have learned just what to do. I need to leave my past behind me. I need to look to the future. No matter what will come, no matter what I've done, I know just what to do. And that's all because of you.
Hello everyone, welcome back to You Okay. I think this is our fourth video since we premiered, third if we're not counting the intro video, and we are back with another one as promised. A bit of a slightly heavier one today, so please make a cup of tea, grab a glass of water, be comfortable. This guy is also joining us. He doesn't have a name yet, but he joins me for comfort when I need it. I think if you look at him, you'll feel better as well. I don't know, but yeah. So if you see this guy on the video, you must know there may be comfort that is needed. And the title of today's video is On the Other Side of Morality. And I think just by hearing that topic, you can kind of gather what today's content is geared towards, and the desired outcome at the end of the video is to delete the shame that comes with making moral mistakes. It is to release people from the shackle and burden of the consequence of things they've made that are somewhat considered by society to fall outside of moral standards or moral instruction. And I suppose it's also to paint the picture of secrecy, judgment, and where they come from, and why we go to such great lengths to actually avoid that. And that takes me to my beginning place, which is to actually contextualize belonging. Because I don't think you can ever get to shame stories and you can ever get to shame discussions if you actually don't understand what it is that produces shame in the first place. And if you actually contextualize belonging properly, you will realize why people are willing to pay whatever the price in order to still belong. Once you get the true depth of why we need belonging and how embedded and intrinsic belonging actually is to our functioning, then you become less judgmental over the little things you did in order to retain that belonging. So at the end of the video, I'm hoping we will get to a place where you feel you understand fully why you need to belong. And equally so, you understand why you do the things you do in order to retain belonging. And perhaps start devising alternatives that can still give you belonging without the burden of shame. And typically, shame stories arise when we have done something that falls outside the norm. You know, we need a norm cohort almost. That's how we understand life. That's how we understand societal rules. That's how we understand acceptable and non-acceptable behavior. Because there's a normal somehow, although defined by external constructs, but the normal is there. We all kind of geared towards, I suppose, averages, that the typical way of doing XYZ would be to do it like this. So when you do something that falls outside of that, there's a bit of shaming thing that we experience, whether we're ashamed by others or we feel different and we feel like the other. And that causes shame upon ourselves. If we're going to start with belonging, let's chat back to when belonging actually begins. I don't think as humans, we actually have a first-hand experience of what it feels like to not belong. As soon as you are born, in order to survive, you have to belong somewhere. That's just necessary for continuity of life. You depend on mom to be able to feed you. You depend on family to decide where's home, who are my siblings, who's my community, what race am I. Ever since we have been alive, we've always belonged. We have surnames so we can belong. In other cultures, we have clan names so we can belong. As soon as you are born, there is feedback all the time of where you belong. And very soon there is rules almost like how do you spot your own kind of thing. And it's how you behave, how you look, how you are called, and it's constant reminders that this is where you belong, this is where you belong, this is where you belong. And in order to make the process of spotting your kind easy, there's behavioral expectations that people who belong in this place behave like this, so that there's synchronicity in the group. Home has rules, school has rules, workplaces have rules. It doesn't matter where you go, there's rules of belonging in that place. Therefore, obviously, to make sure we still belong there tomorrow and our livelihood can be taken care of, we continue to behave in those ways. So originally, belonging is like for survival. It's not for jokes and it's not for shits and giggles. It's actually for livelihood. You know, if you think back to when you were a kid and how brief moments of being ostracized and shunned were, yet how painful not getting the invitation to the party, not being chosen for the team, not being part of the popular kids. Once you get momentary feedback that you don't belong there, it doesn't matter how short that feedback was. All of us do not remember it as a pleasant experience, because suddenly the threat of being outside, the shelter and protection of belonging with other people, you feel the vulnerability. You feel it. You're incredibly vulnerable to risk and even to death when you don't belong. This is why people don't live in the streets. This is why people that live on those streets are so incredibly vulnerable, because they don't essentially belong to this home, to these parents, to this family tree, to this society. And danger is normally they're normally the first to receive danger. The rain, lack of food, harsh climatic conditions, bullying, killing, you name it, they are at a greater risk, primarily because their belonging is somewhat restricted. So belonging is protective. It's the reason why you've got 3 meals a day. It's the reason why you've got a roof over your head. It's the reason why you've got companionship and social belonging. That's how badly you need belonging. A lot of painful things would happen to you if you didn't belong anyway. And to even add to that, you actually don't have an experience of not belonging. It has never happened to humans to not belong. That's why it feels unhuman, and we start to malfunction when we don't get the continuous feedback that you belong here. Spouses belong to each other, parents and children belong to each other, we belong to the school, uniform says where we belong, this and this says where we belong, but continuously the environment says, you're one of our own, you exist, you matter to us. And if you look at all social experiments that have been there, that prove that nurture, love, connectedness is necessary for survival, it will be confirmed from the findings of those studies that if you live without care for too long, you start to malfunction. I mean, take for instance when there is a bit of an injury in the connection between you and someone you love, you instantly feel unwell, although they haven't done anything to you, because there's suddenly a drop of how much they deposit affection into you, and you can feel that you are starting to malfunction. And if that continues for a long time, then you really malfunction. This is why we're so quick to apologize and so quick to make amends, to come back to our belonging space. We need it. You're going to feel it when you're not getting enough of it. If you're not getting enough warm smiles, embrace, touch on your hand, food, if you're not getting this constant validation that you make impact, you matter to the other, you are part of a whole, you start malfunctioning. You start being impaired. You start feeling physically not okay. And if you were listening to our first ever video where we spoke about experiential conclusions, you'll see that although the experience of belonging started happening when you didn't have words, physiologically you felt it. You know how it feels to be warm and loved. Although you didn't have fancy words like belonging in the beginning, but you do remember how warm it feels to be cared for. You also remember what it felt like to be punished, to be shunned, and to be distanced from the other. So you feel it, you remember it, and as soon as somebody activates and triggers you, you can feel like that you remember this terror from somewhere. You remember it. And we start to hide stuff that will cause us not to belong. You know, the older you grow and you start becoming self-aware, and you start attending school and play groups and whatever, see how you start noticing what is the in-group and how do I relate to the in-group? And you start hiding the parts that aren't consistent. So if you go to school and it rewards smart people, and you've become self-aware, and you think you are different from what is categorized as smart, there's just no freaking way in hell you're putting your hand up to answer a question. Not because you don't want to try, but because then you will be exposed that you don't belong with the others. And that risk is just simply too high. Passivity, being timid, and being invisible, at least it still ensures that you belong, or at least you pretend you do. That's how much we are willing to pay for belonging. And actually the price is justified. It's not sucking up. It's necessary for livelihood. Even if you look at it from animals and evolution, if it's just you and you're not protected by your other people, you'll fall victim to the predator. This cohesion and this otherness with other people protects you from danger. You're not isolated in the spotlight, spot the weak link. You can't even really spot who's weak when we are a group. This is why we need each other. And this takes me then to what happens when you've undertaken a behavior that differentiates you from the other. And that's where our shame stories begin. When we have done something that isn't typical of what is to be expected for that particular group. And globally, we're going to talk about the human group, the human race, the moral race. When we do things and we know our in-group doesn't accept them, instantly our belonging is under threat. We perceive it to be in danger, and we start acting in ways that still ensure that we at least have it, and that's where secrecy comes. And typically, the most common things are infidelity, dating other people's spouses, terminated pregnancies, early debut to sex, children out of wedlock. Our norm group has decided what is good behavior, and they reward good behavior by giving you more of love, more of acceptance, more of nurturing, more of those things we've already decided we need. So when you behave in that way, you get that back, and this transaction ensures livelihood. And when you've done something that doesn't quite belong there, you start fearing that if they were to know, the rewards would start being less and less and less. And from growing up, we remember less and less and less didn't feel okay. It wasn't good for us. And you're sitting with this conflict. Expose it and risk being thrown out of your norm group, or keep it a secret so you can at least retain belonging. But what happens when you keep your mistakes a secret? You feel like a fraud. You start feeling like this belonging is superficial and can actually be taken away from you at any given time, because you think the reason you still have the belonging is because they don't know the thing that you've done. And that's where your anxiety and being on edge actually begins. Whoever loves you, you start thinking they love me because they don't know that I've done X, Y, Z. Whoever compliments you, you start thinking you got the compliment because they don't know how fundamentally flawed you actually are. When you experience a good connection, you like, as soon as they know X, Y, Z, this connection is gone. And you start feeling an inconsistency between how the world receives you and what you think you really are. And that dissonance isn't comfortable. Our last video was focusing on dissonance and how dissonance feels. Shame is a heavy and fatal thing to carry. Feeling embarrassed and scared and wrong, feeling dirty, feeling broken and damaged is the worst thing you can feel as a human being. And to cover our shame, we start to lie and pretend and fake, because we're literally doing the best we can to still make sure we belong somewhere. It's a pity we don't realize how much that actually takes away from you. Because now not only do you fake belong to the in group, you don't belong to yourself either, because you know what it is you've done. So you always feel like they like you because they don't know, but deep in your heart of hearts you know. So you feel like this isn't legitimate. You're not a legitimate human being. You've asked a lot of people, they'll tell you that I feel like a fraud. I feel like at any given time I might be exposed. Every time they are succeeding, it's like it's a matter of time. When you feel like you don't believe your own success, you feel like at any given time, you might actually lose it. You don't feel that you're really, really smart. You don't feel that you're really, really loved, because it's like, it's an if-only kind of game, that they love me because they protect me because, and if they knew that thing that I've done, then they wouldn't love me anymore. And keeping secrets and shame stories and protecting them within yourself makes you feel like you're a hypocrite. And even that secret is to make sure that you still at least belong to yourself. When you've done something, let's say, that is unsmart, and you belong to the subgroup of smart people, all your life you've believed you are actually an intelligent person. Imagine doing something and you thinking, that belongs to the stupid group, and I don't belong to that group. It's such a dissonant feeling to wonder, can you still call yourself smart if you didn't know safe sex and you got pregnant? That terror comes from that. Can I still define myself the way that I used to? Can I still be me? And those are terrifying questions. To wonder, am I still me? And if you're not even sure, are you still you? How can you be sure that other people will still receive you as you? So of course you bargain and act in ways that will still give it to you somehow. I normally sit with people that have made moral mistakes, that have acted in ways that aren't really in accordance with their norm group. People that have failed a test and they struggling to consider themselves as intellectual still, people that cheated, people that terminated a pregnancy, people that denied their children's paternity, and the key question is always placing yourself again to your original source of belonging and asking yourself that core question: if I think I am a person of integrity, a person of moral etiquette, and I've done that, which has been explicitly stated by my norm group that it is immoral, but now I've done it, can I still consider myself that? If I thought I was kind, and now you've done something that is unkind, can I still consider myself that? And it can be terrifying to get to a place of wondering, can I still be me? Can I still be me? And I hope the video has somewhat introduced why then acting outside of morality. And by morals, I don't really mean morals in the traditional sense. I mean the rule system of your norm group, the how we behave in this house. That's what I mean by morality, the standard of what is acceptable behavior in our norm group, and acting outside of that, acting outside the moral instruction of what makes you you, is what we're essentially talking about. And I hope we all begin a process of being deliberate and overt about seeking a norm group that can allow us to be consistent with what's going on the inside and what they know of us to be on the outside. And really, shame cannot survive that. True acceptance, non-judgment, it dispels and it deletes shame. And that is the task of being an adult. Trying to get to a place of finding an in-group that we can craft new belonging, legitimate belonging, that you're not constantly under threat of when they're going to take it away. Because I fit to the human, imperfect, all-embracing, accepting group that knows humanness. This is why we go to therapy. This is why we change friendship groups. This is why we sit with a certain kind of people the older we grow. We're striving for that internal consistency. That me, who I am on the inside, is what I'm able to portray to them. I'm not constantly ducking and diving between what they know and what I did. So I really, really hope the conversation has at least sparked that thought process inside of you. And we are going to see you on the next video. Our next video is called Emotions and the Enemy. I know this one was slightly long. We are gunning to always make the videos approximately 20 minutes. As we continue, please do indicate in the comment section if this is adequate for you, or if this is too long, or if this is too short, so we can actually craft this in such a way that it's okay for you. And I hope when we come back, he has a name. What do you think we should name him? And you can always join us when we're going to talk about difficult things. Thank you so much for subscribing, for liking. I love hearing from you. Please do tell me what you think, and do make suggestions, and we'll see you soon.